Welcome to the Skellig Cree Centre funded workshops for how to draw your family tree, ancestral connections. My name is Lorna Maloney and I work for UCC, and I'm delighted to be working on this initiative. I also have a genealogy channel for the Genealogy radio show, which I produce and present at Radio Corcovashkin, so that may have some sources that you may find useful, because we've been running shows for the last 8 years. This week's or weekend's workshops are really built upon ancestral connections, mazes of the past, our amazing journey that began online with COVID-19, where we deciphered the past and uncovered the mysteries of family history. We contextualized, we discovered ancestors, and we engaged very much with the landscape to engage with the records. So we're looking at how to draw your family tree, and then we're going to be looking at land records, civil registration, and religious records as well. This is an example of the type of templates that you can get for family trees, which I'll be looking at on Sunday morning, because we can get plenty of ideas of how to make family trees look very attractive and also to make them very meaningful. The landscape of Skellig Cree and all this beautiful county is absolutely fabulous, and it provides a hinterland of where our ancestors left from during the famine, and that some areas didn't recover from population-wise. So just to be aware when you're drawing your family tree and looking at a rural landscape, that they were possibly a lot more populated than what they are now. This again is a type of template, an example of some of the templates that we'll be looking at, that you can start getting ideas of how you can fill in nice graphics for your tree. But let's get on to how we view our past, with our collective past, our contextual past, and our personal past. All have a place in how we draw our tree. We very much look at collective paths with online trees, all 9 billion of them that are available online now. And we can see a collectiveness happening with matching and so on, and being able to take hints and being able to draw on an information. But sometimes we can draw on information and insert the wrong information into our tree when we're drawing it. So we'd hope that we'd be teaching people and helping people avoid such pitfalls over the weekend. The contextual past is the context of what happens to our ancestors during the time we're drawing a tree. And we look at many famous trees to see what's happening there. And of course, we always bring ourselves to how we draw our family tree with a personal past, and that we're biased. So what we choose to select, what photographs we choose to put in, what we leave out, always influences how we draw a family tree. A pedigree is a drawing of a family tree. A modern pedigree is often used by genetic counselors and medical professionals to assess families, spotting patterns or indications which can be helpful in diagnosing or managing an individual's health. So there's a tie-in between a genetic tree and a genealogical pedigree. It's done in a different way, but it is the same output, if you like. You're looking at kin and relations and concrete relational links to past and present relatives. This is an example of a genetic pedigree, and you can see just how it works in relation to what it's pointing out to you and how clear it is as well. But what do we do when we're drawing our own family tree? Well, we write a list of all our family members. We include our parents, brothers, sisters, including half-siblings, children, grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, nieces and nephews. And don't forget yourself. So if you'd like to take time for this exercise, start with yourself. Don't forget yourself. Write a list. Just maybe you can get them in artist workshops, blank pages, large enough to be able to hold the information and clear enough with no lines on it so that you have the space to visualize without the noise of any type of linear arrangements, to be able to draw and sketch out what a family tree would look like as well. Why do we want to write up our family histories? We want to feel an emotional connection, a desire to search our roots, a desire to have a legacy to the past for ancestral connections, explain our origins. There are many reasons: legal, historical, political, and psychological. How we write up our family trees is important, and these 10 points here give us pointers as to what we're doing. We can choose a format, define the scope, start implementing timelines, choose a theme, do some background research, use the records, use images, organization, materials, sources, and citations. And we would hope to cover some of these over the course of these workshops. What do we mean by format? Family tree type, booklet, chart, table, tree, biography, autobiography, a memoir, a pamphlet, a newsletter. All these are types of format. When we define the scope, we have both lines of descent, perhaps, or a single line of descent. Patrilineal lines, matrilineal lines. So patrilineal lines are father, or paternal line. Matrilineal lines are mother, or maternal line. We may decide to take one. We may only be able to take one. Perhaps we don't know our patrilineal line. It's less likely that we wouldn't know our matrilineal line, but it does happen. Adoption, second marriages. And remember, we're looking at ancestral connections, so we don't know if people married again quite quickly, usually in a very quick space of time. Well, were these half-sisters? Was this a new family? And so on. We come across a great deal of dilemmas and brick walls, stonewalling, problems. Problem-based learning is really important for how we decipher the past and how we define the scope when we're drawing our tree. Using timelines. These timelines differ according to what you want them to be. Chronological, writing schedules, charting events, contextualizing historical themes. If we know an ancestor worked in the railway, well, that might preclude him being born at an earlier time than railways, if he was going to be too old to be operating on as a railway worker. Learning about the significant events in our ancestors' lives is key to drawing up a successful family tree. Taking the time to even looking at a chronological timeline can really make sure that we understand the differences in travel for our ancestors, pre-famine and post-famine. And we understand the differences of what is going on. Now, when we choose a theme, we need to know our journey. Immigration, migration, emigration. Is it a rags to riches story? Is it a riches to rags, clogs to clogs? Farm life or city slicker? Does it rise out of colonialism? Are they leaving a colony to end up with a new life? What's happening? The impact of war. All these themes will impact on how and what you're interested in when you're drawing up your family tree. Your background research is important, to know your relatives, to listen to your relatives, and to talk to your relatives and neighbours, especially the ones that you don't like. The primary sources, the diaries, the letters, photographs, newspapers, certificates and articles are all key to using records and documents. It's important when you're drawing up your family tree to sort out your research into separate themes, to divide photographs from letters. Storage advice is essential so that you're not mixing materials. If you store items properly and keep them in the one place, it's really important that they're not mixed though as newspapers against photographs and so on. Make a list of items borrowed or lent. Start keeping records of your own data and your own research. Some of the outputs for drawing your family tree can be charts, maps, and illustrations. So materials for research can be many different outputs of what's going on. Then we have index, citations, and sources. Sources show us where we have got the records and the information for our family tree. It becomes essential to be able to source information properly so that we are able to go further back in time and to understand the type of citation we're using, whether we are looking at a baptismal register or a census record or a land record. And as we go back and become more skilled in the 18th century and 17th century, these open doors for us if we're able to read the sources when we're drawing our family tree. An example of a family tree can be this is my own, and just some basic names, no dates of birth, nothing at all, just the names, just to give me a clue as to who the great-grandparents are. Doing this on a PowerPoint presentation using a hierarchy chart, just having a simplistic way of display can really help me know what's going on, really. So where do I start? Well, you start with yourself. As we've said in our previous slide, you collate all the information that you have. You have your dates of birth, marriages, in-laws, outlaws as they're called as well, aunts and uncles, and grandparents, all the relatives that you can think of. Your sources for your family tree are often your dates of births, BMDs, civil registration. All these are key to understanding how you're going to draw up a tree. The evidence for your family tree, civil registration, religious ceremonies, and family information. Civil registration in Ireland began in 1864, and it's still going on today. Unlike some countries, we are responsible for civil registration, so it isn't done in the hospital. It is done as part of a process of going down to the registry office, even today, and has not changed. This is an example of a family tree, a 4-generational family tree template, freefamilytreetemplate.com, and it's a really good, clear indication of where I start in the bottom, parents the next line, the 2nd generation, the 3rd generation, the grandparents going back to the 4th generation, the great-grandparents, and where you can see that there's an exponential load of the numbers going on there. Kinship is a funny matter when I'm looking at such a widening of a pool of relatives and so on, and degrees and kinship bonds. And one of the things I would have discovered when I was researching for this presentation was that we have Abraham Lincoln, but we have George Clooney linked to Abraham Lincoln, who's a half 5th cousin. Tom Hanks, a 3rd cousin, 4 times removed. This is the type of hook that perhaps gets you interested in understanding what your legacies of your ancestors are. Recounting and recalling all your ancestors as you trace your family tree back in time is giving you that formula for the nth generation before the present. Your family tree has 2 end slots, 2 for parents, 4 for grandparents, 8 for great-grandparents, and so on. The number of slots grows exponentially. There has been a lot of debate around how many great-great-great-great-great-grandparents you have and how meaningless that is. But indeed, it's not meaningless, because we are here as a result. If one of those great-great-great-great-great-grandparents was missing or never had existed, well, neither would we. So it's never meaningless to go back as far as you can or to try and make that effort. What you need to know: family relationships, cousins, kinship ties are essential when you're drawing up your family tree. This is an example from Duffy's work on Brian Boru, looking at his death. And if you like, the little crosses show the deaths of his siblings, and look at the O'Brien line. And the ancestry, which is so beautifully done in Duffy's work, is really nice and clean, showing a line and showing his uncle, or Kinethic, or his brother's father. You know, you can see a real type of what's going on with the Kennedy surname and the links and so on. And you can see where the deaths just being put in is really important, because 1014 is the Battle of Clontarf, where many fell. And it gives a contextualization of who's disappeared at this time. This is an example of a pedigree of the family of O'Brien, going from Brian Boru, and it's a very nice example of a pedigree chart with clean lines, information on it, and how you display that, or what you bold if you're trying to draw attention to something, is very effective in what you can do. The library Ireland.com has a very interesting connection with the royal family in England and the aristocracy and nobility of Ireland, which was in some way connected as well. So this type of source can be valuable to you looking at pedigrees and seeing how they operate. Resources for research include Library Ireland, where you get heart pedigrees, which have been criticised for flaws and errors, but it is a way for you to start when you're introducing into your family history. Conventions for trees are also an area where we would discuss what you can do as well. But let's have a look at the relationship and the degrees of consanguinity, the degrees of blood ties. And this is an excellent color-coded image which we sourced, and it shows you the type of color when you've got the second degree, half brother, half sister, a niece or a nephew, a grand or grandson, daughter, full sibling colored in yellow, identical twins in red, the fourth degree in a type of teal, the great-great-grandfather, the great-great-grandmother, the great-great-uncle or aunt, first cousin thrice removed, so 3 times removed, because the second cousin twice removed would be the 7th degree. And what we're looking at here is quite significant in the degrees of how we're looking at them. The third cousin once removed is the 8th degree, and the fourth cousin the 9th degree. Very interesting to be able to look at these degrees and just do a little bit of research on them yourselves and try and get used to the different relationships that are going on with kinship ties. We have an example of a type of tree which just displays a cousin, a great-grandparent, where you are. And we would hope that this would give you an idea of how to display your information, to make it attractive and so on. Some of the things we look at can be some clean type of work with children, siblings, marriages and so on, but some that might do better with the conventions of always making sure that the surnames are capitalized. Because if you're reading that tree, it's quite hard on the eye Whereas if you read it and it had capitalized surnames, it would be easy to work out where the Browns were, the Cyanes were, the Millers and the Disneys, and the Schlemschits, the Lunds, and you could see it at a quick glance just what's going on. This is an example of a type of pedigree tree that has a lot of heraldic crests, and these are quartered. These are very important for each of the families to be able to visually display at a glance what their fortunes are, what they stand for, who they are in battle, who they're allied to. Every colour is significant, every little mark, every symbol and sign. In a pre-literate age, these were essential for knowing who was who. Here we look at the Ahnentafel, German for ancestor table, a genealogical numbering system for listing a person's direct ancestors in a fixed sequence of ascent. We have the subject or proband, the father, mother, paternal grandfather, paternal grandmother, and maternal grandfather, maternal grandmother. This is numbered. We have the subject or proband being number 1, the father and mother number 2, the mother being 3, the paternal grandfather 4, paternal grand number 5, maternal grandfather 6, 7, maternal grandmother. So even for male and odd for female. And then you can combine these combinations to get numbers that denote relationships. Now what we have here is a tree that gives an example through heraldic crests and heraldic coats of arms, showing just at a glance who's who, what's happening, how they're linked to each other. And such a family crest or heraldic experience would be able to denote power structures at one glance. The longest family tree in the world is that of the Chinese philosopher and educator Confucius. And the tree spans more than 80 generations, includes 2 million members. There's an international effort involving 450 branches around the world, and that was revised in 2009 to coincide with the 2560th anniversary of the birth of the Chinese thinker. So we know that Elizabeth I, we have a tree of hers going back to Adam. How trees are displayed and what they mean is of immense importance to those. The first Ahnentafel was published by Michael Etzinger in the Thesaurus Principum, and that was in 1590 that this publication illustrated the first new functional theory of numeration of ancestors. The schema showing Henry III of France with his ancestors in 5 generations. And that's in a publication. It's showing you the advent and the introduction of the print world and how important it became to suddenly display this type of knowledge in a print form. The register system is one that uses both common numerals and Roman numerals. The system is organized by generation, and the generations are grouped separately. The system was created in 1870 for use in the New England Historical and Genealogical Register, published by the New England Historical Genealogical Society based in Boston. That type of numbering system is very sophisticated, and it's an excellent way to be able to reference back who you're talking about within a tree, especially if you've got similarities in naming patterns. Now, just to conclude our workshop, we do lots of short online courses, certificates and diplomas, summer schools. We have funded programs, and we have been offering part-time education programs to Cork, Munster and beyond since 1946. We're very proud to celebrate over 70 years of educational service to the community. Skellig Cree is part of this initiative where we have a relationship with Kerry County Council, UCC, and we're delighted to be able to share this with you and to have been able to help you draw your family tree.